What is your name and can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi Douglas. My name is Shane Donaldson. I'm a PE teacher here at Renaissance College. I've been here now for 8 years. I've been international teacher for about 20 years and I'm originally from New Zealand. I'm married to an American lady. My wife is Alison and we have two beautiful young daughters, Ida who's 5 and Lucia who's turning 3. And as it happens to be, we're moving to New Zealand this Sunday afternoon. So we're actually leaving Hong Kong. A little bit about me. Obviously been a PE teacher. I love my sports. I coach the girls basketball team here. My favorite sport is golf. And yeah, that's pretty much who I am.
So what inspired you to become a PE teacher? Was there a moment where you just be like, I want to be a PE teacher?
Not really, I just needed a job, to be honest. I did a physical education degree, and when I finished that, I was kind of working in the fitness industry, working in a gym, and I was kind of bored of it actually. It was sort of the same routine every day. Everyone wanted the same programs, either to get muscles or lose weight, and it was just a little bit boring. So I went to teachers college as a backup, and I still wasn't 100% sure I wanted to be a teacher. My first job was given to me by my uncle, who was a head of physical education at the time. So I got lucky. It was a very challenging school, but it was pretty rewarding. I guess I learned very quickly that I do love the job. And so, yeah, nothing in particular really inspired me other than that I needed to earn some money. But I wouldn't have done this job for 20 plus years if I didn't love it. And every day is different. And that's what makes the job so interesting, And what makes the job different? Students. You never know what they're going to say, what they're going to do, and I think that's where my love of the job comes from. Yeah.
Could you remind me how many years you've been working in RCHK?
I've been here 8 years now. I took over a maternity position for Mrs. Broom actually, and it was only supposed to be 3 months. It turned into 6 months, and then it turned into a full-time position. And so 8 years later, here I am.
After 8 years, now this is your final week at RCHK. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, it's a bittersweet feeling. Absolutely love it here, and I can't say I really wanted to leave. We kind of made the decision around the 5th wave of the pandemic, and we hadn't seen our family in 3.5 years. I've got 2 young girls, and we really didn't know when Hong Kong was going to open up again. So with the way contracts work with ESF, you kind of got to give them quite a bit of notice. So we had to give 6 months notice. We didn't really know what life would be like in December. So yeah, the fact that Hong Kong's pretty much fully open now and we'd resigned, maybe there's some regrets there. But we are moving back to New Zealand, which I'm sure will be, fantastic for my girls. New Zealand's known for the outdoors, running around on grass and bare feet, lots of open space. So, a lot of happy memories, a lot of like goodbyes going on this week, which are emotional. The longest I've been in a school was 4 years, so I've done double that here, and a big part of that is because, we really enjoy Hong Kong. I love the East meets West vibe, and the Renaissance kids are some of the easiest I've taught in the world. It's great. So yeah, it's going to be a very sad last day, but also a lot of fond memories as well.
From your experiences as a teacher, how has teaching in RCHK differ from other schools you've been taught in? Like, are the students behaving differently? Do they learn differently? Could you tell me a bit about that?
Well, if I had to compare, for example, the first school I taught at in Renaissance College, so the students I first taught, getting them to school was a challenge. Keeping them in class was a challenge. You didn't even worry about homework or assignments at this point. It was like, could they be at school? They came from very disadvantaged families. A lot of my students had immigrated from the Pacific Islands, Samoa and Tonga. And a lot of them had a lot of culture sort of shock when they arrived, and many of them started affiliating themselves with sort of gangs, and that's how they felt comfortable and at home. But with gangs sort of brought things like, like fights, smoking, alcohol. So that was always a battle for us. But at the same time, the students' ethos and the Pacific Island ethos was church first, family second, school third. So you sort of had to go with that vibe a little bit and do the best you could. Whereas if we look at Renaissance college students in the year 12 and 13, very driven, very academic, quite prepared to give up sports so they can focus on academics. Some of the scores that our students get here are incredible, some of the best in the world. So the flexibility you have with teaching here is greater because you can pretty much try things out, and students will try stuff. So a completely different challenge. I think my first job was more pastoral, more trying to really get the students to trust you, so you could sort of make some sort of positive impact in their lives. Likewise, the students here, I feel like they take time before they give you their trust. I think Renaissance students can be a little bit standoffish at times, but once you kind of taught them a year or two or coached them or been on a trip with them, then I feel like a lot of those barriers come down and you can really make those connections. So it works both ways. Once those students trust you, whether it's at a tough school or an academic school like this, it's a lot easier. Yeah.
Speaking of connections, as you've said, what was the most meaningful and memorable memory you have made in RCHK?
Yeah, look, a lot of different memories, and thinking about this, often at the end of the year we get cards or notes from students and thank yous, you've been a great teacher, etc., etc. And it tends to come from students that you would expect. They tend to be the ones that are high achievers, very motivated, do anything you want, and that's fantastic. But I remember getting a card one day from a student who, for 2 years, I thought she didn't like me, she didn't like PE, she didn't smile, she really looked like she was miserable in my class. And she wrote me the most beautiful note I've ever read, thanking me for everything I did for her and all the special times that I encouraged her and pushed her and helped her. And I was blown away because, you can't judge a book by its cover. You really can't always tell what students are thinking. And I've kept that note. It's about 4 years old now. I think the student has graduated. I won't say her name. But notes like that tend to motivate me. You feel like you're making an impact. And I often say to my advisory and my students, and I try to teach them, I say, look, when you see your teacher each day, and you do a fun lesson, thank them for it. Say good morning, because those are the little things that teachers really care about. It's not about getting presents and stuff. It's just, it's respect. And I know it works both ways. But yeah, as I say, I've had a couple of those sort of notes, and they're the ones I've kept, and those are the ones I cherish when teaching.
I believe at one point you were a Ming House Director. What was that experience like for you?
It's funny, yes, I took over from Mrs. Draper, and at the time Ming House were the most dominant house in the school. They won everything, basically. They were always house champions. And I took over, and I came up against Miss Lung, who had taken over Song House, and Song House went on a run. They won about 3 years straight. They were dominating, and Miss Draper, former Ming House Director, used to remind me all the time how they used to win when she was in charge, and she was right. And it didn't really bug me. It was funny, but I still felt that I'd taken Ming from the top, not quite to the bottom. That was always Ching House. But in my final year, we actually won every major competition going. You name it: cheerleading, idol, swim gala. I felt like I was a student. I was grabbing those trophies and I was holding them up and I was kissing them and getting photos with them. I didn't do anything to earn them, really. We had amazing house directors, but that experience was fun. I mean, I'm not really an extrovert. I'm an introverted person. The job really forces you out of your comfort zone. Getting on stage in front of the entire assembly, you've got to realize teachers still get nervous, and it doesn't always come naturally, and particularly for me. So being up on stage was definitely a real challenge, but I'm glad I did it. But yeah, you can't beat winning those trophies.
Saying about getting out of your comfort zone, how would you inspire students to get out of their comfort zone? For instance, if a student who is not really engaging with PE, how would you incentivize them and offer them an alternate perspective about PE? Yeah,
to inspire those students that don't really want to be doing it or don't want to be there, everyone's different. My philosophy with PE is I don't care if you're the best athlete in the class. I'm looking at your effort and enthusiasm. So with students that aren't really trying, they tend to be ones that struggle in PE, but also they tend to be students that just want to hide away. They don't want to be put on the spot. So you just have to find ways where they can participate, maybe without the spotlight on them, but also letting them know that you've noticed that, hey, yeah, you did something good. Well done. Keep it going. Yep. Try this next time. Yeah.
So would you say attitude matters a lot in terms of trying to improve in something?
To me, it's the number one thing. Attitude and enthusiasm above all else. We could have some of the best athletes in the school in a PE class, but if they haven't got a good attitude, then it doesn't work. If I do have great athletes in a PE class, I try to encourage them to be more like leaders and to help those ones that we're just talking about, the students that do struggle a bit. So yeah, when we think about sports scholars and captains and things like that, I try to push both ends of the spectrum and say, look, I'm not the only one here. You guys are capable as well. And so I like to empower some of our students that way as well.
In 2020, I believe that you were on Zoom class a lot.
Yes.
And I've been listening to your voice at my house, watching my computer, and I've been listening to your voice a lot. So, in the summer of 2020, I was watching the Tokyo Olympics, but I couldn't help but recognize your voice on my television screen. Now, could you tell us a bit about that?
What would you like to know?
Well, why, besides online learning, why did I hear your voice in my television screen?
Well, because I was at the Olympics commentating. That's kind of a part-time job for me. I love basketball, Douglas, and when I had the opportunity to go to Japan and commentate, I jumped at the opportunity. So, nah, just kidding. All right, Douglas, I'm going to have to come clean here. So yes, I remember getting your message that day. I think we're on Zoom and we're all going a little bit crazy, and you said, hey, is that you commentating? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And I thought you would work out that it wasn't me, but you were like, oh my gosh, you're amazing. That's so cool. And I'm like, all right, we'll just keep it going. And it probably went a little bit further than I expected, because other students started coming up to me and asking me about it. And I was like, yeah, that was me commentating, but it wasn't. I think at the time, it was still 3 weeks quarantine. And, I was still doing my Zoom job. And yeah, I've thought about this for a long time, Douglas. And I wanted to tell you, but I thought, why ruin the moment? But now that you've asked the question, I think it's a good chance to come clean, and it's a great story. I've told many classes, but I've always left your name out of it. I've never said who the student was.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind that at all.
And So much so, I actually screenshot our conversation and I black out your name and I flash it up. And the students just love it. They think it's amazing. There were a couple of students, I think like Cassidy and that, who they're like, it wasn't really... I went on YouTube to listen to this person. I was like, who's he talking about? And I got on and I listened to some of the games and I was like, oh, does it sound like me? I guess a little bit. I mean, what I hear and what you hear are probably two different things, but, you know, well, it went even further because I told Mr. Burns and he found a picture and photoshopped my face onto a commentator. And I think that I sent that to you, which just took the joke even further. In the end, it was kind of a practical joke. I didn't know if you were messing with me. I started messing with you, and then I didn't have the heart to tell you the truth.
I did realize that photo looked a bit off, so I knew that we were playing each other, and it was, I have to say that was one of the most funniest and most enjoyable pranks that I've had in my high school experience.
Do you still have the conversation between us?
Oh, I do.
Oh, you
I
do?
do. I do.
Yeah, very good.
Do you have any advice that you would like to share to any students moving on to the new chapter of their lives?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is the best thing about life is connecting with people, and I think you just got to try and disconnect from your phones a little bit more. I think, you know, I didn't grow up with phones. Obviously, we've got them now, but, you know, like I said, life is about connecting with people. It's about relationships, and I honestly think phones are get in the way. So that's my first piece. Try to ditch the phones. Sit on the MTR without your phone and look around, and just take things in. The other piece of advice I would give is, I was a big fan of Kobe Bryant. Not so much when he was a player. I learned a lot about him after he had actually passed away. And I didn't realize his work ethic was just off the charts. I'm not saying you should work like that. He was kind of almost insane. But I feel like you just want to try to be better than what you were the day before. And just 1% better, a little bit better each day. And, you know, I think enjoy the process rather than the goal. It's like Kobe, it was all about the work ethic, the process of getting there. And he had a great quote, it was like, rest at the end, not in the middle. And if you break that down, it means like, look, you know, just go hard in your career, do whatever you're doing, and, you know, don't rest up. And then when we retire or when we die, then hey, we can rest then, right? That would be my advice.
Well, Mr. Donaldson, I have to say this has been a delightful and enjoyable experience. And you're one of the most kind-hearted teachers I know. So I don't know what the future may hold, but I wish you the very best in your future endeavors.
Well, Douglas, you know, sitting here answering your questions, yeah, I'm glad you asked. It means a lot, and only too happy to have done this interview. And yeah, I wish you guys all the best as well in whatever endeavors you do. You've got your whole life ahead of you, and you know, go big or go home. Obviously a big shout out to my girls. I wish I could be here for Akamas actually. That's one of my biggest regrets, is I'm not going to get to see the girls at Akamas. But hey, go Black Kites. I'm sure you'll be great. Just a huge shout out to my colleagues here at Renaissance College. You know, it is the friendliest school that I've ever worked at. And I feel like a lot of that comes from our leadership at the top, Dr. Brown, who's super positive every time we see him, Mr. Wheeler, and that filters down to the staff, and of course to the students who, it's a real shame we've got masks on at the moment, because I very much think that expression is so important, and it's hard to see your smiles at the moment, and hopefully the masks go soon. But as I say, every time I walk past you, make sure you say hello. Even if I look grumpy, I'll always say hello back. So all the best, Renaissance students. Cheers.